This is the Real Estate Marketing Minute, the show dedicated to helping real estate agents get to the next level of success. Featuring experts on topics that agents want to know about and providing tips for marketing smarter so that you can create a brand that attracts more clients and more referrals. The Real Estate Marketing Minute podcast is brought to you by Agent Sauce, the leading real estate marketing platform for high-performing agents. This is the Real Estate Marketing Minute.
Hello and welcome to the Real Estate Marketing Minute. I'm your host, Adam Small, and with us today in the studio is Kimberly Small. Hi, Kim.
Hey, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. And today we have a special guest in the studio, and that is Miss Amy Latka from Dream Home Media. Hi, Amy. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us today. So you're with Dream Home Media, and Dream Home Media is a photography studio, right?
Well, yeah, more of a media marketing company for realtors than a studio. We don't have a physical location, but we specialize in real estate photos. So we are going out on location to the listing and doing all of the services there.
Okay, cool. So before we dig into the podcast here, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into photography and owning your own company and Dream Home Media?
So let's see. My dad was a photographer and owned a camera shop in the town in southern Wisconsin where I grew up, and just always made sure that wherever I was going, I had a camera in my hands. And never in my life did I think for an instant that I would make a living as a photographer or that I would want to be a photographer if you'd asked me when I was growing up. And so I chuckle as I look back and I'm like, oh, no, I tried to do something else and it just kept coming back to the camera. Specifically for real estate, I had been an event photographer for a long time, and with the onset of digital technology, things really changed in the event world, and it was harder and harder to make a living. And I was looking for some other way, and I got hired to shoot the inside of a church that had been renovated, and I made some pretty good money. And I was like, oh, maybe this interior, maybe there's something to this interior thing.
This just might work out.
This might. And it turns out there was this whole other genre of photography that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
And I just kind of fell into it.
Well, there are worse things that could happen than falling into a nice job, right?
That's
falling
right.
into a good career and
right.
business. So
and something that you love to do. I really wanted to make a living with a camera, and I get to do that. I'm so lucky.
Cool. So things have changed a lot in the last several years, making it easier for people to take quality photos and video. Even with that, an amateur is still not going to be able to capture the quality of photos and wow and impress both buyers and sellers, because the seller matters too. They want to know that the product being put out there looks good, right? So what are some of the things you and your team are able to do with photography that, a typical agent wouldn't be able to do?
Preparation of the home is a big deal. I will say for us, we train our agents, if I can use that word, to have the homes ready for us when we're there, which makes our job so much easier. But really the biggest thing, I think one of the bigger differences that's going to be between us and an agent taking the picture, aside from the fact that we're using a professional camera, is the ability to control the lighting in the situation.
Right.
It's really huge. As of yet, there's no way for an agent to have a flash connected to their cell phone.
Right.
And to come in and light a situation. And it's one of the things that makes real estate very challenging, is that we don't really know what we're getting ourselves into when we arrive at a house. I mean, we have some idea, but the lighting could be very dark if the home is painted dark, or if it's more of like a cabin type home where it's filled with natural wood,
or just poorly lit, right?
Or just poorly lit, right? And so really the difference, that's where you're going to see the difference, is that your professional real estate photographer should be able to come in and make that home look light and bright and beautiful regardless.
Is there any situation where an agent should take their own photos, maybe at a certain price point, or if it's a extreme fixer-upper?
I hate to give business away, but at some point, yes, I have shot a couple of homes that were supposed to be flips, and they were awful. Like I didn't even want to be in them. They, I'm like moldy and
So to
just
clarify,
nasty.
it's not that they flipped it and just did a bad job. It's just that
Right.
they didn't get it done.
Well, the idea I think was that it was going on the market as a potential flip house.
Okay.
And as an investment property,
Okay.
if you could say that, or maybe it had been partially flipped and was unfinished because whoever owned it had run out of money or whatever the case may be. We don't do very much of that kind of work. And so that may be a situation where the agent might want to take their own photos. But again, it really depends on the property. If this is a home that's maybe going to max out under 150, then I don't know if it's worth it for them to invest in professional photos. But if the home, for example, we shot one a number of years ago now on Pennsylvania in the Meridian Kessler district that had been neglected and abandoned for a number of years and was in pretty rough shape.
Right.
But we went in and shot the entire home, warts and all, and they listed this house for like $600,000.
Wow.
So
Even in bad shape.
even in bad shape,
Yeah.
because of its location and the lot size and the good bones of the house,
Right.
it was absolutely worth it.
Right.
And then, the house was sold and renovated and is now absolutely stunning. So, but again, that's a much higher price point,
Right.
So
So it sounds like honestly that a lot of it comes down to, is it worth the investment of photography, right? And really that's kind of be subjective to the agent,
to the
seller,
agent,
right?
Absolutely. Although we did have done a ton of business with a couple agents who specialize at that like $150,000 to $200,000 price point.
Right.
And every home that we shoot for them is immaculate. It's staged. It's, straight out of Pinterest. It's
Right.
been
Well, and that's the thing is with professional photography, one of the benefits is that you bring out the best in the home, right? Even
Right.
if it's in poor
Absolutely.
condition or whatever, you still bring out the best of it and display what it could be.
That's it, I think, is that a really good real estate photographer has in the back of their mind, what could this property be and how can I best showcase it?
Right.
And that's my job, is to go in with that vision and help them sell that vision of what this house could be.
Right. So along those lines, beyond pictures and photographs, what about HD video and aerial imaging as opposed to on the ground taking it with your camera? Are you guys doing some of that? Are you seeing a shift towards that? What about licensing and insurance requirements and stuff like that? All of that stuff.
Yeah, we do both HD video and drone photography and video. For the video, it depends on the property. What we find when we hand the finished product over is that the agents are using that as kind of a sneak peek, or like, we have this listing coming soon, take a look at this video. And that it seems to work really well with social media marketing, not necessarily traditional MLS listing kind of stuff. But if an agent is really doing a lot with social media marketing, then the videos grab a lot of attention.
Right.
Regarding aerial imaging, yes, we have seen a huge upswing in this. And if the property has any kind of size to it, or if it's got a great tree line, or if it's near a reservoir or something like that, absolutely. I mean, hands down, get aerial photos. We do have some agents that every single property that they list, they do aerial photos as well.
Wow.
So, and video with the aerial is a little bit less common, although when we do the HD videos, we tend to ask our agents to think about whether or not they want, 30 seconds blended in, 30 seconds of aerial footage blended in to that video, because it's really going to help showcase the lot and the location of the home. We find especially like homes on golf courses and things like that, they can fly up the golf course to the back of the home and just to give a perspective that you don't get from the ground for sure.
Right. So, what type of equipment do you guys use for that? I mean, obviously you're using a drone of some sort, but is this like the drone that anybody could buy off the shelf there, or is it a little higher end?
That's a great question for my drone flyer. Because I do leave that to him. He is, to get back to one of your earlier questions, or bring it back to that, he is licensed. He has his Part 107 and is insured. So it's important. I'm going to point this out too. Anyone can go to the FAA's website and look up your drone flyer to make sure that they are licensed appropriately and insured. If they are not on there, even if they have insurance, my guess is that insurance is not going to cover them if they crash their drone into your property or hurt someone.
Right, because they're operating illegally, right?
Exactly.
So one of the things that we've kind of touched on, you are in fact for commercial purposes required to have a license in order to do drone footage.
Absolutely.
For commercial purposes, right? And if you're not on there, like you said, even if you're insured, you're engaging in an illegal activity, and insurance tends not to appreciate that.
Correct. Correct.
So yeah, that's really an important thing to look out. So, a piece of advice for the realtors would be, hey, make sure that they are in fact licensed and verify it.
Yep.
Right?
Verify it. You can look it up, like I said, on the website and on the FAA's website.
We'll put a link to that in the comment section, in the description section of the podcast, right? So,
Perfect.
So that
they
all
can
of
do
our
a search
listeners
for
can
the
see
name
that.
of their pilot is who they would be searching for.
Cool. So, what other types of things that, are coming out here soon? 3D tours is one of them. So where do you see that going from a photography perspective? What do you think of it?
We like it. We do offer Matterport, which creates a 3D rendering of a home, kind of a dollhouse view, and then you can zoom in and move around the home. We think it's really cool. The agents that use it obviously think that it's really cool. It's, aside from being in a property, it's the best way to see how a property flows, how a floor plan flows. I do think that some homes are easier, the more modern homes are easier to do a 3D property tour in. And
is that because they're more open?
Yeah, because they have a more open floor plan.
Right.
The older homes just get to be a bit blockish, and not that you can't do them, you absolutely can, but that's where, again, kind of going back to the idea of a professional versus just having some agent offices have a Matterport and then the agent goes out and does it. I think especially in those homes that don't have as open a floor plan, having a photographer who specializes in kind of thinking about a property in a 3D way is going to help you create a 3D tour that makes more sense visually. And as you're moving through, the way that they're set up, you have to have good spatial recognition of a space, because you're moving the camera along, and every place that you move the camera along to is there's a little circle in the floor. And
kind of like that hot spot, right?
It's like a little hot spot that they click on to move around the house. And if you're not thinking about the property spatially, and how would I be moving through this property if I were just walking through it, it can be very confusing when you're looking at one of those 3D tours. Right.
That had never actually occurred to me. I knew what the circles were insofar as that's how you move through it, but it never occurred to me that was something, as you're taking the photos, as you're creating this tour, that you need to really take into consideration, because I imagine you could end up with some goofy spots.
You can.
All throughout it, and you're just like, okay, what's going on here? I want to go over there. I don't want to be in the corner over here.
Absolutely. And we found that we can always tell when there's someone who's new to creating a Matterport or any of the 3D options that are out there.
Right.
When they first start, we can tell when we look at their tours that they're not used to doing that, because
You're
you
new to
can
this.
kind of get stuck in a corner and not be able to get out or get into
Yeah.
a room and not be able to see the other dots once you're in that room. It can be kind of confusing.
Interesting. Very interesting. I'll have to hunt some of those down.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, well, I can send you some good examples
okay.
of good Matterports.
Okay.
so,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Let's not pick on anybody.
That's
right.
right. That's right. We don't need to name any names.
No.
So you've talked a little bit about the different, like the Matterport and the aerial images and that. What when an agent's just thinking about what they should do for a property or what they should do in general, because some agents, this is how in their listing presentations, this is what I'm going to do for your property. I'm going to do the same thing every time, regardless.
Mm-hmm.
So as they're thinking about that, what should they be thinking about for their investment for those different things? Should they highlight, this is what I do for properties of in this price point, and this is what I do for other properties, or how should they look at that and determine where to invest?
That's a really good question. I think one of the things that we offer our agents, whether they realize it or not, is a marketing brochure of all of our services. We use it both to market our own services when we go meet with a new agent. We also can hand them, a dozen or a couple dozen of these and have them use them for their listing appointments. Because what it does is it sets down a full color spread of all the services that we offer and examples. And then that way they can sit down with their client or their potential client and say, here are all the services that I can bring to the table to sell your property. Maybe we're going to start with photography and aerials, and if we need to move on to a 3D tour, we can, or whatever the combination is that's the right combo for that property. But that's really it. Photography and the services for the listing is, yes, about getting that current listing, but it's about branding for the agent, and it's about them being able to come back to a future client and say, listen, here are the services that we offered. You might pay me a higher percentage rate, but I'm going to bring in a professional photographer, professional videographer, professional drone flyer. We're going to market your property in XYZ way and be able to sell it. In the past, they will have all of their stats for how quickly they've sold homes in the past doing that. So it's not about the one-time listing and getting that. It's about them building the system so that in the future, when they're meeting with future clients, they have all this proof to back up their results. Does that make sense?
They have data, right?
Right.
It's a measured and metric thing where they can literally say, because I do these things, I'm able to sell the house in this much faster amount of time, or get you this much higher
a higher value
amount.
Exactly.
And the professional photos are a portion of that. Are part of the reason for that. So.
Absolutely. So did I answer your question?
Yeah, it's just I know agents talk about the different technologies and trying to justify an aerial photos or video or the Matterport and all of that, and just trying to figure that out. And there's no mathematical equation to figure out. They're going to have to figure out what that is. But you as a photographer can talk to them and say, with this property, certain things would be
absolutely
better to showcase.
And sometimes when I get there, an agent might have an idea that they want to do a twilight photo of a home, which would be the evening photos with the sunset in the background and the windows are all glowing. And that can really make a home look stunning, but you got to consider, what does the front of the house look like? Is the front of the house the showcase, or is the back of the house the showcase? Are there any other exterior lighting? Have the sellers put in landscaping that includes night lighting? Because all that's going to make a difference. If it's kind of a basic home and they don't have night lighting, then maybe a twilight isn't a great investment for them. Maybe they should use that money elsewhere. And we're happy to talk to them about that. And when we get to a property too, if they haven't ordered aerials, we may just give them a call and be like, hey, you know, the property looks amazing. You might want to highlight this one with a drone if you haven't already. You know, if you're not using somebody else, we noticed you haven't placed the order with us, which is fine, but make sure you get drones for this property.
Right.
And sometimes, depending upon the time of the year, obviously, they may be waiting. So if it's, you know, late winter or early spring, they don't really want to invest in the drone property if the home sells right away. So they might wait for the drone photography until the property greens up a little bit.
Right.
That's just timing.
Any new technology on the horizon that you guys are exploring or that you've seen that?
Not right now. We haven't, I mean, there's a couple new 3D technologies that are coming out, but nothing that we feel at this point is a good replacement for Matterport.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Now, I know a lot of agents have favorite photographers, and, you know, comparing that to stagers, they accommodate their customers, but they have their own personality and their own sense of style when it comes to a home. Would you say that's the same for photographers that are specific in real estate?
Absolutely. Everybody has their own kind of vision for how to capture a room. And one of the things that I like about how our website is set up is that when an agent comes onto our website to place an order, they can select a photographer and then see examples of their work. And I think that helps the agent, you know, they obviously then have a better idea of what they're going to get as a final result. But yeah, absolutely. Everyone has their own style and maybe sees it a little differently, holds the camera at a different height, you know, whatever that might be. So there's going to be subtle differences, but generally there should be a pretty good baseline of what our photos look like. We do like to say that we're interchangeable, at least on my team, so that one of the things that makes our business powerful, Dream Home Media powerful, is that we have a team of photographers. So if I'm not able to be there, one of my other photographers probably is able to step in and photograph that listing. And it should be pretty close to what I'm producing.
You all have a certain baseline of skill and
Skill.
ability.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you said, you train your photographers earlier. And I just did air quotes, even though you'll never see that.
Right.
You know, so, but you did. You said you trained them. So you all have this.
Well, we train our agents.
You train
the
agents. So.
We train the agents to have the homes ready for us. And a certain, you know, we want to make sure everybody's on the same page of what photo ready is when we get to a house. But the photographers
know
do
what that
also,
is too, though, right?
Absolutely.
So.
And the photographers are trained. I mean, our team has, we've all been doing real estate photography for at least 10 years. So we have a pretty good idea about what we're doing. Yeah.
So if I'm a new agent or I'd moved to a new area, that sort of thing, what are some of the questions that I should ask a photographer when I'm looking to find somebody to, you know, it's really a partnership to work with them because I want them to take good photos. I want it to look good. I want it to be effective, you know. So what are some of the things I should be asking you before I decide to work with you?
Well, I think the main thing is about booking. How quickly can, a photographer get booked, and what's the turnaround time? It does no good for the agent to book a photographer if the turnaround time in this market is even 48 hours. That could be too long. That could cost the house a sale. You know.
Right.
So those are really important. I think looking at the value for your money is important. What are you getting? How many photos are you going to get from your listing? And how much are you going to spend for that? I'm not a fan of super ultra low pricing, but you do need to be competitive for what you offer.
Right.
And so obviously that's important. Agents are definitely interested in knowing how much a photo shoot is going to be, the base price is going to be, and what all we're going to get for that. Another question would be, does that photography service include professional editing, whether it's the photographer who's doing the editing, or are they sending it off to another editor to make sure that those photos look as good as they can.
Put some pop on it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You talked a lot about training agents, but that trickles down to training the seller as well. So
Absolutely.
what tips do you have there for agents who are, because obviously they need the help of the seller to get ready?
Absolutely. Well, we can always tell when an agent hasn't been able to effectively get their message across to the seller as to what is ready. We provide on our website a link to a home preparation cheat sheet, and we encourage our agents to use it. Some of them actually print it off and put it in their folder for their listing presentations so that everybody's on the same page. And because prepping the home, it does no good for us to come and photograph the home if it's filled with a bunch of personal clutter. And making sure that the home is ready for us to photograph, and everyone having the same understanding of what ready, in air quotes again, is really important.
Yeah, defining ready is the key probably, right?
Absolutely. When we get a new agent in, at least for me, if I get a new client to shoot for, I intentionally send them a little welcome message with a link to the home prep and say, you may already have something like this, but we just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Please feel free to share this with your seller. And that way our expectations are all the same of what the home will look like when we arrive. So we're on a tight schedule. It's not uncommon on a nice day, especially with this weather pattern that we've been having, to shoot, 6 or 7 homes in one day. And that's not going to happen if when we arrive, the sellers are needing to move stuff and get the home prepped, and all of that needs to be done before we get there.
Right.
And sometimes it's easier to hear that from somebody else as well.
Absolutely.
It's an agent has already met with their seller, and they might have their ideas of what they need to do, but hearing it yet again, it's almost like, you tell your kids something, and until they hear it from somebody else, they're not going to do it.
Exactly.
So since we're talking about photography, I know you guys don't do headshots, but I'm sure you've seen a lot of headshots. Any input on that?
Well, yeah, I definitely think agents should have professional headshots. I think having a more modern and fresh look, personally, would be my preference. I still see a lot of the kind of classic black background or gray background, just, forgive me for saying it, but really boring professional headshots.
Right, right.
Don't make yourself feel uncomfortable, but give yourself a fresh look for sure.
And what about recency? I see somewhere, and you asked for forgiveness, so I'm going to have to ask for forgiveness too. It looks like the photo is 20 years old.
Exactly.
And you can tell in part because of the style and the layout of the photo, or the hairstyle or something, or because you've met this person and they don't look like that anymore.
Right.
So,
absolutely.
I think recency is probably a big factor too, right?
Absolutely. And there are plenty of other photographers that specialize in portrait work and headshots that can hook you up and probably hook up your office. And if there's anybody out there who needs that, we'd be happy to make some referrals for you. So, someone who can come into your office and give everybody a new headshot update, we'd be happy to make that referral.
Cool. Very cool.
And you work primarily in Indianapolis area, but I'm sure you know photographers all over that you can.
We do. And, it's just like any genre of life, really. Photography is a small world. So if there's someone else that's located outside of the central Indiana and they need something, feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to make whatever referrals we can.
What would you say to somebody who's looking to get into photography or real estate photography? Any advice or, get out, don't come in, what would you say?
So as an event photographer, I had experience going into places that I hadn't been before and being able to make adjustments on the fly to get the photos that I needed. But real estate photography was really different. To get a quality image that was the quality that agents were used to seeing from other professional real estate photographers really was a change of skill. and a change of equipment for me. I do shoot with specialty equipment that I only use for real estate photography that does not apply really to any other areas of photography that I use. I absolutely had to increase my knowledge of lighting an area. When I had a studio space, the lighting's consistent. I never had to change it. You know, I knew what I needed to do to make the images look a certain way.
Right.
And generally it was all within a very small window of settings. And
but now you're having to walk into any
Right.
number of places,
any
and
number
figure
of
out
places
how
and figure out
to-
how to light it, how, you know, where do I need to stand.
So that means you're bringing lighting with you, doesn't it?
It does. I bring
Yeah.
lighting with me. And, you know, I'm now at a point where I can walk into a house because I've been doing this for 10 years and know where the shots are. And by that, I mean, like, I know this is where the camera needs to be. This is probably where the light needs to be. And it might take a couple tweaks to
Right.
get the image that I want. But I don't need to shoot as much. I don't need to take as many frames. Where when I started, I was just, you know, taking frames from every single angle I possibly could to make sure, because I really didn't know where, like, what the final image was
What
going to
was
look
gonna
like
come out
in my
good.
head.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah. So it sounds to me like for a new photographer or somebody looking to get in real estate, probably some of the bigger things that you're talking about is it's entirely different framing than it is with, you know, taking portraits or wedding
Absolutely.
or whatever.
Absolutely.
Just because you know, it's funny. We friends with a couple of photographers on Facebook. Some of them are wedding photographers. And you know, they're beautiful images, and you got the couple in the front and all that, and the background's all blurry and all that, so they really pop. But you don't do that with
Right.
real estate, right?
Right.
So it's an entirely different mindset, you know,
It is.
and all that. So so it sounds like the framing is big, and then
Framing
the
and lighting would be the two biggest challenges, and it might not seem like much, but, you know, I offer the challenge of anybody who's thinking about it to photograph your own home, see what it looks
I've
like.
tried. It's not pretty.
Right. You know, see what you get when you do that, and how much your settings change and where your lighting needs to be, and how it being a sunny day versus an overcast day affects all of that.
Right.
So, yeah.
Different
it's-
angles of a room. And all of that
Absolutely.
stuff.
Absolutely.
Come out very differently than what.
It can. I wasn't kidding. I have tried to photograph my own place. I like photography, but purely amateur. And occasionally I'll get a good picture and be excited about it, right? But I have tried taking pictures of my home. You know, outside is easy enough. I shouldn't say easy, but it's easy enough to where it's like, okay, I can live with that one. But inside, I just can't live with pretty much anything I've taken on the inside. So I understand the challenge there, and it got the better of me, that's for sure. So I appreciate your work is what I'm trying to say.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
before we wrap up here, is there anything else that you'd like to add that we didn't touch on? Anything related to it at all? Final thoughts?
Gosh, I mean, regardless of whether or not someone is using our company, they really should be using a professional real estate photographer just as part of their team. You know, you had mentioned teamwork earlier. We just think it's so important, not just for this current listing, as I mentioned, but as they're building their brand. And right now, with this market being so hot, I think some of the newer agents especially don't really think that maybe the investment of professional photography is worth it. But I tell you what, when the market turns, and it will,
It's going to be an issue.
it's going to be an issue, because when they sit down to win that next listing, and all of their previous work that they have to show that listing agent is photos from their phone or from their little point and shoot, or even if they went out and bought a more expensive camera, and they're going to compare that to another agent that the seller might be meeting with who does offer professional photography,
Right.
or has a professional photographer as a partnership. Gosh, they're really going to have a hard time the ones that aren't doing professional photography right now are going to have a hard time winning that listing once the market turns.
Right, right.
It's similar. I always cringe when I hear an agent say that business is really good right now. I don't need to market.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well, and that's how you get in that feast and famine cycle, right?
Absolutely. Well, it's all part of the branding, you know, and if they're not building their brand right now with professional partnerships, whether that's stagers or photographers or whatever, they're not going to see the results if they wait to start until the market turns.
Right.
Right.
Kim, any final thoughts?
No, I think that's it. This has been good.
It has been good. So here's my final thought. So Amy, in her final thought, said, even if you aren't using us, you should be using somebody. Mm-hmm. To me, that tells me that she believes in what she's saying. She believes in the power of real estate photography and that there's something there, because she's saying, even if you aren't using me, you should be doing this no matter what. So that's my final thought. I think that lends a lot of weight to everything she said here today. Thanks so much for listening, guys. We do appreciate it. We'll see you next time on the Real Estate Marketing Minute. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Real Estate Marketing Minute. Make sure you don't miss an episode. Subscribe now. Want to take your real estate career to the next level? Check out agentsauce.com. Until next time.